I was young and unafraid, didn't know where to go. I used to smoke as a teenager, and this is my story. Back way back when, I used to run an e-commerce site, a little website, like dropshipping. And it did take over. This was especially coming out of COVID-19, and sales started to boom. First, I made a couple dollars every day, and then it started being like $1,000 every week, which is a serious amount of money, especially for a teenager. So next thing, I found myself watching so many internet influencers and people who smoke cigars, people who go traveling and all of that kind of stuff. And I thought, I want my share of the high life. Taking that money and those big earnings, I would immediately go to the designer shops, go and having delicious pizzas and meals and burgers at the fanciest, not only staying at the fanciest hotels that I could afford, but also going to the world's best shopping centers. And I found myself being attracted to the high life and things that were just traditional of being ultra wealthy. And I started going into the cigar shop. Now, in the beginning, the cigar shop was just interesting because they had all these really weird mannequins of fat people and skinny people, really these desk toys, things that said Mr. Teacher or The Boss, all these weird gimmicks that people would put in their office, or fancy clocks, fancy memorabilia, and that was what attracted me. But soon enough, I found myself wandering to the very back that they call the humidor, which is where they keep all of those cigars, and having so much extra money on me, and having already stayed at hotels, bought designer clothes, and traveled around. By then I'd already bought a motorbike, so I was going out in the middle of the night. It was like 12, and I would go out, have something to eat, and then stay at the hotel. And I did that, which is absolutely ridiculous. So the next step, logically, to me, was to go into the cigar shop. And I picked my very first cigar. Now, this was already 6 months ago, so a very long time ago. And on that very day, I didn't smoke it right there and then. I waited a little bit because I was quite excited. I bought myself a fancy lighter and I'd set up the mood perfectly. I went to a very fancy hotel and I was sitting by the pool. My plan was to swim and then smoke the cigar so that my breath wouldn't stink and my parents wouldn't know. And I did actually enjoy that first cigar, but I realized or thought to myself, it isn't that tasty. I don't taste any of the notes, as they say, the flavor notes. And I actually walked away from my very first cigar smoking experience thinking, that's actually a little bit spicy. The very next day, though, I remember walking out from the hotel, and in that shopping center where I was staying, where the hotel was that I stayed at. So remember, now I'd bought a cigar, enjoyed it by the pool, then I had stayed over at the hotel at that shopping center. And when I woke up in the morning, I was walking around the shopping center because I stayed in the hotel there. And I found myself drifting not just around the mall, but back into that cigar shop after I had tasted that disgusting, or at least very spicy cigar. And you guys wouldn't even guess what I did. I bought another one. And on that same day, I smoked it. And this kind of process continued. I mean, not every single day, but at least once a week. And so long as I had money, I was buying cigars. The business was still doing well, and cigars were definitely flowing in and out. And I was smoking a lot of them, to be honest with you. And then it got to the point where my business did actually start to go down, and I didn't earn the same amount, like $1,000 every week. So my money was really limiting me, and I was almost forced to stop smoking cigars. But then I started selling my secondhand stuff and doing everything I could to earn a bit of money, not actually understanding that my brain was addicted to that nicotine and to that feeling of, that is so cool, the smoke. So when I earned money, the second I did, I started buying cigars. Not the fancy, expensive ones that I was trying, like Baccarat. I don't even want to mention the names because I don't want you guys to ever start. It's not cool. And I was earning, even if it was $1 or $2 or $5 or $10, that was going immediately to cigars. Cigars and coffee to pair both of them, which just sounds ridiculous. And I then did that, not just 6 months ago. This is already 4 months ago, leading up to like 2 or 3 months ago. And my business then took a dive, and my money went from not even being $5 or $10 recurring every week or every month to literally being zero. So now it's very much spurts and sputters. But because because my business didn't generate that money for a long period, maybe even a month plus, I didn't have any money to buy cigars, and I didn't do any of the things that, let's say, drug addicts or heroin addicts would do, which is just sell everything in their house or steal money. I didn't resort to that. I wasn't that addicted. So I just let the nicotine get out of my system as a function of having no money to even buy the cigars, and now I haven't had one in weeks. But I promise you, next time I have money, I really might feel compelled to buy the cigar. Today I actually had money. It was about, let's say, $35 worth. Walked past the cigar shop, the cigar shop, and I didn't even go in. And I think that was my rule that I'd set for myself, not to even go in. Because once I go in, it's highly likely that I walk into the humidor, smell that tobacco, and think, nah, it's not too bad. Let me get a cigar. And I want to explain what happened after my first few cigars. So yes, expensive cigars in the beginning, those thick, big ones, which were quite a high price for each of them. But then, as my money started to decline, I moved from big cigars, normal size ones, to smaller ones. So meaning they're still full-size cigars, but they aren't big ones. They just have a smaller diameter. From there, when my money went lower, instead of spending $3 on a stick or on a cigar, it started being, I have maybe $2 or $1.50 equivalent. And instead of smoking the cigars, I moved to the cigarellos. And now you can just imagine, cigarellos to cigarettes, not as big of a jump as we might expect or as you might think. So if I continued going, and again, with nicotine, it's just like caffeine. If I have a cappuccino or if you have a cappuccino every single day, after a week, you can have 2 cappuccinos and the next day you won't really feel sick. But if you have never had coffee at all or any caffeine and you have 2, you'll really feel sick. So now imagine a cigar, and then cigarello, cigar with a cigarello later in the day. All I'm doing is I'm increasing my nicotine so that my tolerance increases. And that's just going to get me addicted. So then once I run out of money, because instead of having 1 cigar to fulfill me or to satisfy me, now I have to have 2. So it's double the cost. And if my money isn't increasing, if my income isn't increasing, I can't afford them. Which means in order to get the nicotine, which I'm so craving and my brain is actually desperate for and addicted to, I'm going to then move to cigarellos. And then I'm just going to look for the absolute cheapest way to get the most amount of nicotine, which could actually end up with me buying cigarettes. Now, cigarettes are majorly different to cigars, apparently. Cigars are just pure tobacco, and most of the time they don't, so long as they don't flavor it, there's just the tobacco, which is carcinogenic in and of itself, yes. But when it comes to cigarettes, there are all of these terrible chemicals which are put into it to not only facilitate the burn, but for the flavor profile and to make it more appetizing. Appetizing, if you can even say that. But it does definitely release a lot of dopamine. So it wouldn't have been very long before I went from cigars to cigarillos, which I did, and then from there I would have gone on to cigarettes, which maybe could have led me to shisha, which maybe could have led to me smoking marijuana, which maybe could have led to me doing hard drugs. But luckily, because of that 1 month stint that I didn't have any money, I was forced to give up, even though it wasn't really an active choice. But I couldn't afford I had to prioritize other things, and I couldn't afford that nicotine rush I would get from the cigars, which forced me to stop. So this is my smoking story. Thank goodness the end of the story is that, at least for now, I'm not smoking anything. We do have to see how time will tell and how the story will unfold. But I commit to at least being healthy. And so long as I gym every night and do the most that I can, I don't think I would relapse. Because I'm doing so much in the way of good for my body that I wouldn't want to detract from it. And I don't want a nicotine addiction. And apparently, nicotine is released out of the body after 2 days. So it's been long since I've had that at least psychological, and if not psychological, physical addiction to the nicotine. So that's my story, guys. And if I could put one lesson to this, don't start. And the second lesson is, there's nothing cool about it. And the third lesson is, it's carcinogenic and will give you cancer. And the fourth lesson is, if you're struggling, well, I'm here to tell you that sometimes being poor is actually a benefit. Helps you to not be addicted. Guys, or you, I believe in you. You can cure your addiction.